Under cover of night, on November 29, 1943, USS Minneapolis led Task Force 67 into Ironbottom Sound. Their quarry was a Japanese Navy convoy bound for Guadalcanal. Minneapolis's 8-inch guns roared to life, signaling the beginning of the Battle of Tassafaronga. She swiftly sank an enemy transport and aided in the destruction of another ship. But the Imperial Navy would not go down without a fight. The tide of the battle shifted, and 2 torpedoes tore open a hole in Minneapolis. Despite losing her bow, she managed to limp back to a nearby shore, where the crew, alongside Navy Seabees, faced the immediate need for emergency repairs. Lacking proper supplies and equipment for such significant damage, they gathered thick, sturdy coconut logs to shape and wedge into the gaping wounds of the cruiser, creating a makeshift but crucial patchwork. Although still battered, the coconut logs gave Minneapolis the necessary buoyancy to reach friendly waters for proper repairs. Patched up, but still vulnerable, Minneapolis set sail again, hoping to avoid the Japanese patrols looking to finish the job and send her to the bottom of the Pacific. Named after the iconic city of Minneapolis, Minnesota, the USS Minneapolis was the second United States Navy ship to bear this name. Part of the early 1930s New Orleans-class cruisers, these vessels were originally conceived under the limitations of the Washington Naval Treaty of 1922, which capped their displacement at 10,000 tons and restricted their armament to 8-inch guns. The class, initially dubbed the Astoria class, featured 7 cruisers split into 3 evolving designs aimed at refining their combat effectiveness and lethality. The USS Minneapolis, along with the Astoria and New Orleans, spearheaded the first phase of this development. Initially considered light cruisers based on their tonnage and armament, these ships experienced substantial transformations. As their designs evolved, the Navy recognized the increased defensive capabilities afforded by their enhanced armor and reclassified them as heavy cruisers. The keel of USS Minneapolis was laid down on June 27, 1931, at the Philadelphia Navy Yard, and she was launched on September 6, 1933, under the sponsorship of Miss Grace L. Newton. The heavy cruiser was commissioned on May 19, 1934, with Captain Gordon W. Haynes taking command. Following her commissioning, the Minneapolis underwent a rigorous shakedown in European waters from July to September 1934, followed by alterations back at the Philadelphia Navy Yard. On April 4, 1935, she set sail for the Panama Canal in San Diego, arriving in late April to join Cruiser Division 7 of the Scouting Force. The cruiser's presence was maintained on the West Coast until her deployment to Pearl Harbor in 1940. Minneapolis was equipped to carry 4 recoverable floatplane aircraft, enhancing her ability to scout the horizon and spot potential enemies from afar. Additionally, her robust defensive capabilities included an armored belt that was 3 to 5 inches thick and deck protection ranging from 1 to 2 inches, fortifying her against enemy fire. To deal a decisive blow against the American naval troops in the Pacific, the Empire of Japan led a surprise attack against Minneapolis's new home base, Pearl Harbor, on December 7, 1941. When the attack took place, the USS Minneapolis, displacing over 10,110 tons and stretching 588 feet in length, was some 20 miles away conducting a gunnery practice. The cruiser, powered by 8 Babcock & Wilcox boilers and capable of reaching a top speed of 32.7 knots, immediately went on patrol after the entire region was put on high alert. In January 1942, USS Minneapolis joined a carrier task force bound to raid the Gilbert and Marshall Islands. As part of these strike teams, the heavy cruiser screened USS Lexington, and Minneapolis and her crew of 708 sailors did so with diligence. On February 1, 1942, her 5-inch anti-aircraft guns and her 50 caliber heavy machine guns roared to repel an air attack that targeted Lexington. During the furious fight, Minneapolis's crew destroyed 3 Japanese Mitsubishi Betty medium bombers. With the road cleared, the task force made way for the islands, and Minneapolis successfully screened the carriers during the attacks against the Japanese, conducted on February 20th and March 10th. Besides pummeling the islands with their 9 8-inch main guns on 3 triple mounts, Minneapolis and the carriers also disrupted Japanese shipping and supply lines for the enemy garrisons at Leyte and Salamaua. USS Minneapolis's first significant engagement was the Battle of the Coral Sea, which raged from May 4th to 8th, 1942. During this standoff between the aircraft carriers of the U.S. Navy and the Imperial Japanese Navy, Minneapolis was once again tasked with screening Lexington throughout the 4 long days of air and naval combat. The cruiser cooperated with great success. The conning tower and barbettes, each protected by 5 inches of steel and turrets with up to 8 inches of armor, made her a mighty shield for Lexington. Through the onslaught, Minneapolis stood next to the carrier like an impregnable fortress, opening fire with all her guns and darkening the skies with accurate fire that tore apart 3 enemy bombers headed for the Allied carrier. Despite her stout defense, the enemy overcame the air defenses and landed 2 torpedo hits on Lexington. Crippled and vulnerable, the Japanese swarmed her and finished her off with 2 dive bombs. As the carrier went down, Minneapolis, still fending off the enemy, rushed in to rescue as many sailors as possible. The U.S. ultimately triumphed and ensured Australia and New Zealand were not invaded by the enemy, though it came at a heavy price. Minneapolis's crew did not rest. The heavy cruiser was called to the front line to participate in another crucial battle for the Pacific, Midway. She joined the fight against the might of the Imperial Navy at Midway from June 3rd to 6th to protect the valuable aircraft carriers, while their aviators engaged the finest pilots the Empire of the Rising Sun had to offer in dogfights and bombing runs. Ship and crew defended the Navy vessels from Japanese dive bombers, sinking 4 enemy carriers and claiming over 250 aircraft. This loss began the end of the Japanese dominance in the Pacific and opened America's island-hopping campaigns. In the aftermath, Minneapolis and her crew earned a well-deserved rest in Pearl Harbor, where the ship underwent repairs and was replenished with fresh ammunition and supplies. In August 1942, Minneapolis became part of the first American land offensive of the war, sailing as an escort carrier to cover the amphibious assaults led by the United States Marines on the islands of Guadalcanal and Tulagi. The cruiser assisted the Saratoga after it suffered a torpedo hit on August 30th by towing her to safety. Propelled by 4 Westinghouse-geared turbines with 4 shafts, which provided over 107,000 sea horsepower, Minneapolis had the power needed to swiftly move the damaged carrier to safety. Throughout September and October, she continued her mission, supporting other landings near Lunga Point and Funafuti. As the leading vessel of Task Force 67, Minneapolis set out on November 29th to counter a Japanese reinforcement effort at Guadalcanal. During the night of November 30th, the cruiser engaged 6 Japanese ships with her 8-inch guns near Ironbottom Sound, leading to the beginning of the Battle of Tassafaronga. Within minutes, the Minneapolis destroyed an enemy transport and, alongside another cruiser, took down a second ship with several barrages from her main battery. Despite her initial advantage over the enemy, the 2nd Japanese Squadron entered the fray, landing 2 torpedo hits on the Minneapolis and damaging 3 other ships. USS Northampton was sunk during the engagement, and the Japanese emerged victorious, allowing them to deliver valuable supplies to the garrison fighting at Guadalcanal. These 2 torpedoes caused significant damage to Minneapolis, resulting in flooding, power loss, and structural damage to the bow and port side. Despite this, remarkable damage control and navigation enabled the ship to make it to Tulagi. Here, disguised with vegetation to avoid air detection from the enemy, the crew and a unit of Navy Seabees executed temporary repairs on the bow, employing materials available in their surroundings: coconut logs. USS Minneapolis returned to the Pacific for more action in August 1943, beginning with the bombardment of Wake Island in October and the capture of Macon Island in November. During December, Minneapolis screened a carrier group for the Allied landings at Kwajalein and Majuro. Non-stop combat followed the ship during the new year, with assaults on the Marshalls in February 1944. With the Marshalls secured, the invasion of the Marianas followed, beginning with a preliminary bombardment of Saipan in June. While this occurred, a Japanese relief force set sail to disrupt the operation. Thus, Minneapolis rejoined Task Force 58 to screen the carriers during the decisive Battle of the Philippine Sea, where she provided accurate anti-aircraft fire against the enemy and allowed naval operators to guarantee another victory against the battered Imperial Japanese Navy. Triumph after triumph followed. Minneapolis's next endeavor lasted over a month. From early July to August, she brought her main battery to action in support of the Marines fighting the Japanese garrison stationed in Guam. Her support was so essential that it earned praise from General A.H. Turnich, commander of the 3rd Marine Division, who credited the victory to Minneapolis's continuous use of her arsenal. The heavy cruiser's close support role earned the American troops another victory in October 1944 with the capture of the Palau and paved the way for the assault on Leyte Gulf in late October. Minneapolis entered Leyte Gulf on October 17th, taking down 5 enemy aircraft during the initial stage of the operation. The seasoned crew was ready to take down the enemy head-on, and it came true when the Battle of Leyte Gulf unraveled. During the battle for Leyte Gulf, USS Minneapolis played a significant role in Admiral Jesse B. Oldendorf's bombardment group, which included cruisers and older battleships. On the night of October 24th, positioned across Surigao Strait, Minneapolis and her group were prepared for enemy engagement, supported by PT boats and destroyers scouting ahead. As the Japanese ships advanced into Oldendorf's position, a massive, coordinated attack followed. A devastating salvo led to the immediate sinking of one of the 2 Japanese battleships targeted, along with 3 destroyers and the critical damage of a heavy cruiser, later destroyed by aircraft. Admiral Oldendorf's strategic victory showcased the effective tactic of crossing the T, where the group's collective firepower overwhelmed the enemy. The success at Leyte paved the way for the liberation of the Philippines. In January and February 1945, Minneapolis was dispatched to aid in the landings at Lingayen Gulf, Bataan, and Corregidor. In March, the crew prepared for one of the most brutal Allied operations in the Pacific, the assault on Okinawa. The crew opened fire against the island during the pre-invasion bombardment of March 25th. Minneapolis decimated Caramoreto, providing a haven for ships once the mainland invasion commenced. Once the Marines landed and hell was broken loose, Minneapolis attacked the airfield at Naha, rendering it useless and eliminating air threats. The ship then began supporting the ground troops with precise naval gunfire to prevent them from being outnumbered by the enemy. Despite the heavy wear in her gun barrels from prolonged action, Minneapolis managed to down 4 kamikaze attackers on April 12th during one of the enemy's last desperate assaults to expel the Americans from the island. In the aftermath of the Pacific War, Minneapolis flew Admiral Thomas Kinkaid's flag during the acceptance of Japan's surrender of Korea on September 9, 1945. Minneapolis also supported the deployment of Marines in China and brought veterans back to the U.S. before joining the Naval Reserves in May 1946, before being decommissioned in February 1947. The seasoned heavy cruiser became one of the most highly decorated ships in the U.S. Navy during World War II. With 11 battle stars to her name, Minneapolis' service across the pivotal battles of the Pacific Theater left a mark on American naval legacy, teaching the world the extreme efforts the Navy sailors went through to fight an opponent as fearsome as the Empire of Japan.